Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Donald Barkho. Welcome to Ancient Assyrian Props and Costumes, and today we'll be talking about Ancient Assyrian Crowns.
Oh, beautiful.
Ancient Assyrian crowns were worn by kings and also the gods and goddesses of the ancient Assyrians. It signified their rank or their status as divine, especially when the crown came in the form of the horned cap of power, in this sense with the horns. And generally speaking, you could determine whether a deity was of greater importance by the amount of horns that are represented on the cap of power. Now, it is my firm belief that these caps of power, if they were made back in ancient times, would have been made out of felt, thick felt, and horns would have been sliced in half to create a pair, and then these would have been stitched on to the felt. Obviously, the horns themselves would have also been embellished and painted, embellished with metal, possibly gold or silver, and also stones. Now, this particular style of horned cap of power is shown in ancient Assyrian reliefs from the time period of the Assyrian king Ashur-nasir-pal II. That puts this particular style of horned cap of power from the early Neo-Assyrian period. However, you do see these horned caps of power also in southern Mesopotamia, in their iconography and imagery, and it is a very, very ancient design. You can see that it's oval in shape, and it also has a design on the back. That additional extra bit actually helps, which sits just behind the ears here, helps to stabilize the cap of power once upon the head. Next to it, the red crown is based off designs from ancient Assyrian reliefs, and in this case this is from the early Neo-Assyrian period. And you can see here you've got an Ishtar symbol with it's an 8-pointed star and some rosettes, a rosette within a rosette actually, and this is actually a felt band which is separately made and then put over the structure of the crown. This here is an embellishment in metal made from aluminium. I made this one from sheet aluminium and punched the two rows out from behind and then spray painted it a gold color. This crown and this crown, the base has been made out of EVA foam, just floor mats, like this one you see here. These floor mats you can buy relatively cheap from Bunnings here in Sydney, from your general hardware store. So these two, this is a crown of a king and this is a crown of a divinity or a god or goddess. Both of them are from the early Neo-Assyrian period in style. And there on the end, you also have an Assyrian crown from the later period of the Neo-Assyrians, from the Sargonic dynasty. And what you actually have here is three rows . 1, 2, 3 rows of embellishment, and here I've cut out some strips of felt and put in between. Likewise, this too is made out of craft foam, and then these embellishments were handmade out of sheet metal, and then a silicon mold was made of those embellishments, from which resin copies, as the ones you see here, were made and stuck onto the crown. Now, my original intentions for this at the time when I was making it was to get red felt. However, red felt for whatever reason wasn't available to me at that time, and I used what was at hand. So to prove it, if I was to take these black felt bands off, then what you will see is I actually tried to paint it red. However, I didn't like the look. I thought the felt gives it that sense of authenticity it needs. So I had black felt, and I thought black was better than no felt at all. So that's why this one was made out of black felt. This particular color scheme is a color scheme that I based off an ancient Assyrian painting. There is a fragment in the monuments of Nineveh. In the end, towards the very end, you start to see images of paintings and scraps of frescoes from the ancient Assyrian period. And this particular color scheme is based off that. So again, as with the horn cap of power, the Assyrian king's crown, I firmly believe that these would have been made out of felt. We know that ancient Assyrians loved the color red, and this would have been made out of white wool, felted, and possibly actually before it would get felted, it would get dyed red. So pure white wool would then get dyed red to give you a red cap and with a flat base and also the point. Now, what's interesting about this design, the way that I came up with the shape, is I had a look at the ancient Assyrian reliefs and noticed that the angle that the Assyrian caps are on, as in the incline of the cap itself, is a very particular angle, especially from the Sargonic period, even from Ashurnasirpal's period. What happens is, if you were to draw a line from this side and this side all the way up until they met, what you will find is, generally speaking, the angle that's created when you count the degrees of the angle of that triangle that's created once the points are made together, is actually very close to 20 degrees. And that just goes to show that even in the symbolism of the ancient Assyrian crown, again, their concept of the Assyrian king as the sun god of the people on earth is reiterated not only through his sickle sword, which has 20 fingers in the blade length, but you also here see that the angle created by the very slope of the crown he's wearing is actually 20 degrees. And that's been the basis for my designs in these crowns, and I feel like it gives me a very accurate representation to what we see on the ancient Assyrian reliefs. And it's the same as this with the cone on top, with the part on top. What I do in order to get that ideal cone style is, if you were to imagine an imaginary line on the slope of the cone all the way to the corner of the actual cap itself, that will give you the correct angle for the slope of this top cone. And likewise with the Sargonid period crown as well. Here, for example, I'll be showing the first few steps that I go to, and what you see here laid out in front of me is the way that I came up with the correct template for my size head. And what I did was I measured the circumference and then divided it in half, and that measurement was the length of that template down there. So this particular piece is my template for when I want to create my crowns. And what I do is I take that, put it on top of the EVA foam, mark it out, and then cut with a razor blade the pieces. Now you would cut two pieces, or if you had a larger piece of foam, what you would do is draw out this and then butt this up right next to the line that you've drawn and continue, so that you'll only have one joint instead of two. And here what I've done is I've redrawn, so you can see the center point of this particular piece is right here. And when I put my protractor, line it up with my horizontals and my verticals, so that's 360 right there. I need 90 here and 90 here. And there we go. So now I have 10 degrees from my 0 point and 10 degrees or from my 0 point on either side. And if those lines are continued, you can see that's the shape that's given me these perfect alignments for the shape of the perfect slope for the ancient Assyrian crowns in the horned cap of power. Now, I haven't tried this template out yet. I'm just marking it out to create a new template for the new horned cap of power that I'd like to make. And that one will be of Neo-Assyrian period, but from the later half, from the Sargonic dynasty. And that is the classic horned helmet that you see, that's a flat top and then rimmed with feathers up on the top of the rim. And it also has big horns, three pairs, sometimes two pairs, and is also embellished with rosettes. Now, before I get started on that, what I'm doing here is I'm marking out the new template, and I'm just showing you the first steps that I go through on how to mark them out. And I'm curious to see what this particular angulation is going to give me. And in ancient Assyria, in the city of Ashur, you see a temple complex that's dedicated not only to Anu, the god of the heavens, but also Adad, the god of the storms. And here you have a combination. It was a double temple complex that also had double ziggurats. And when you look at the numeration that's attached to to those divinities. You have 60 for Anu and 10 for Adad. So here what I've done is I've made the height. So here in this case, this is 2 hands height, 8 fingers from the bottom to the top. And here you have another hand on top. So this is three hands, giving it 12 fingers in total height. This particular one is obviously the curved shape is the base of it is taller than the king's crown, minus the cone up at the top. So I've made the height of the new one that I'm going to make 10 fingers high. So 2 hands plus 2 fingers gives you a total of 10 fingers. And then on top of that will sit the feathers, which will bring the actual crown up to a height possibly of the same 12 fingers or maybe 13 fingers in total. Now, one thing about felt, because I do believe that it would have been a combination of felt, hand stitching embellishments made out of gold or sheet metal of some kind back in ancient times that would have been stitched on to the felt base of the crown. We Assyrians, till this day, my particular tribe, the tribe of Tiari, Tunaye also, Tunaye still wear as part of our traditional garments the cap, and it comes in a few different colors. Black is the most formal. You also got white caps, and we also make a brownie ready colors also. Now they're made through a traditional felting process over a form made from timber, and the felt usually is about a pinkish thickness. So say a centimeter or so thick felt that's been pressed and wetted and pressed and wetted and pressed and wetted and pressed to create those Assyrian caps that we still wear. However, we do embellish them with feathers. These days, the feathers are becoming bigger and bigger, to the point where some people are using peacock feathers, and each feather is about the size of from my elbow to the tip of my hand. So embellishing caps with feathers is still a part of our Assyrian traditions that we've inherited from our ancient Assyrian ancestors. Okay, so here I've just finished making the horns and sanding back the outside of the cap, and the horns have been shaped. I've glued them on. What I'm also going to do is end up reducing the height, so it'll be approximately 2 hands before the feather parts are actually going to start. And this needs to get shaped, obviously, because you can see the shape of the head has been distorted after I've put horns on, and that's because I didn't heat bend them that much as well. So what I'd like to do is go put it over a small bucket and warm it up with a heat gun so that it'll soften up, take that shape of the curvature of the bucket, and then I'll let it cool down, and that should set.
you going?
Ocean.
What are you up to?
Just doing a bit of shaping for the crown. I've got one more bit I need to stick on. So once I shape this more, there is another part to stick on here. I'm just shaping it the same, and that'll go halfway. It'll end just behind the ears. So yeah, worked on the feathers today, and what's it called? Doing that back seam. Yeah, you can see how many feathers. Look, I'd cut out these as spares just in case. But now you sit down shaping them with the Dremel, and then I've glued them on. Now I did my original calculations here. You can see a star like where each one was meant to go. But then when I started putting them next to each other, I ended up with a tiny gap here at the back. But that's okay, because this is now my marker for the center of the back, which is good. In total, there's 19 big feathers, and this one here is 20. So yeah, there's not much left. I can start painting or sealing it with PVA glue, and then I can start painting it the colors that I want. And then lastly, I've marked out all the spots. Here, these are all spots I've marked out for where the rosettes are gonna go. And I've got some rosettes upstairs that I've made previously. So yeah, all in all, I think it's a pretty sexy crown compared to others that I've seen. Right, so what else I want to talk about is the actual meaning behind these crowns. Now, I have read in an article that this particular style of crown was the crown that was used for the coronation processes, or the coronation of the ancient Assyrian king. And on the day of coronation, there were certain articles or certain items that were associated with kingship, and that was the crown. And this is the crown of Ashur, and you had the scepter, and also the throne. The throne with a footstool. And each one of those represented one of the aspects of divinities that would bless the king on the day of his coronation, and bestow upon him the right to rule. So kingship and the crown, along with the scepter and the throne, were huge symbols of the ancient Assyrian institution of kingship. There is no image that I am aware of an ancient Assyrian king wearing a horned crown, because these were made to represent or to symbolize divinities, gods, their gods. So it would have been the height of arrogance for someone who was a human being to wear this cap
and declare himself a god. That's something that was a bit too arrogant even by Assyrian standards. To pose as a god. What I tend to find these days in artistic representations is kings or depictions of Assyrian kings wearing crowns like this, and it just boggles my mind. I mean, yeah, it looks good. Yeah, it's historically represented. However, it's not historically represented on the head of an ancient Assyrian king. So if you're going to use these crowns in your depictions of ancient Assyrians, use the horned caps of power to depict the angels that you see, that are holding the bucket and the pine cone. Use the horned caps of power to create imagery of ancient Assyrian divinities. Yes, by all means. That's what they were made for. However, to use these horned caps of power to represent ancient Assyrian kings, even Babylonian kings, there is only one that I have seen, depiction of an Akkadian king wearing the horned cap, a horned cap, and even that has only 2 horns, which means 1 pair, and that is of the Akkadian king Niramsin, who has a depiction in the Museum of the Louvre depicting a triumph over the Lalubi, if I'm not mistaken, and in that image he is shown depicted wearing a conical helmet with horns coming from the side. Now, even in the Greater Near East, divinities were depicted with horns. However, the style of cap can vary, as in the actual shape, the base shape, and also the position of the horns. Now, under no circumstances do I condone wearing one of these caps of power with a king's outfit. Not for 1 second. I'm doing it here to give you a sense of what it would actually look like. It looks hectic, but it's not correct. Tumba, 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 tumba. Now, here I'm wearing the Sargonic period crown. You can see it's got three bands of rosettes, and also on the cone there are bands of rosettes. And this particular one was based off Ashurbanipal's hunting reliefs, where he's hunting lions from his chariot with a bow. The particular angle of the crown, when you join these all the way up, these lines, and then count the degrees, the angle that's created when these 2 lines meet, that number happened to be 20 degrees, which is very interesting because, again, at least in the reliefs of Ashurbanipal, the emphasis of the 20, the number of Shamash, and the Assyrian king being the Shamash of his people, the dispenser of justice on earth, that comes into play as well. So you can imagine if he had the sickle sword with the blade length of 20, which symbolizes his justice, and also the crown, the angulation of the crown is angled at precisely 20 degrees. You can see the symbolism that they're imbuing the king with, even in the crown and its angles. Now, what I also have noticed is that the slope of the crown on the horned cap of power with the feathers atop it, not the cone shaped or the conical shaped, but the more boxy shape, still has an angle, but that angle is 10 degrees less than this one. What I mean by that is this is a 10-degree slope when you travel the points up until they meet, and this one's a 20-degree slope. I've also noticed in Ashurbanipal's reliefs that the way I get the angle for the crown is if you were to go from the corner here and then continue an imaginary line to the point of the crown. That gives you the angle for the top cone. Beautiful work. What I did was I printed out the images of the cap from the side view and from the front view, and cut out the shape of the horns from the front and from the side view. I made them to look like the front from the front view, and then continued their length until they are meant to end from the side view. And that's why you get a really nice look. And these feathers, this color scheme of the feathers is based off a rendition that was done in the British Museum recently on the I Am Ashurbanipal exhibition. So that's where this color scheme comes from. However, they have the actual base of the crown in a red color. Now, I didn't want to do everything red, so because I have a red crown. Now, there is a beautiful article that's been written by Julian Reade, and he's a prominent Assyriologist with many articles, and he has one particular article that's based on ancient Assyrian headgear, and I definitely recommend anyone who's interested in ancient Assyrian headgear, such as these crowns, or even some of the headgear of the crown prince, which is usually a band like this that's always tasseled. If you read his article, you'll understand a lot more about ancient Assyrian headgear and ancient Mesopotamian headgear in general. He goes into comparisons with the Assyrian headgear and the Babylonian headgear, and possible suggestions of the origins for this fez style, which seems to possibly have been adopted by the Assyrians from the Kassites who were ruling Babylonia in the Middle Babylonian period. However, it is also just as possible that Babylonians were influenced by Assyrian headgear, and this fez is an ancient Assyrian style that was incorporated by the Babylonians. So historians in general are not quite sure whether or not the cultural regarding the fez style of cap is an introduction from Assyria to Babylonia, or vice versa from Babylonia to Assyria. However, I will say that the horned caps of power are definitely something that goes back all the way to ancient Sumerian times. The imagery, both Assyrian and Babylonian, Akkadian and Sumerian, is full of divinities with horned crowns, and can be seen prominently on their artworks. Now, you notice that the headgear of the kings of Assyria goes through changes, and it's possible that it would have started off without the cone, so it was just the fez, and that the nobility and the aristocracy would have in general worn fezzes. However, in the Middle Assyrian period, with the establishment of the Assyrian territorial state and its expansion, which brought prestige to the king on a level not seen before, amendments were made, and on top of the crown an extra cone was added so that it could be distinguished even among other fez-wearing people. Now, what's really interesting to me in the Sargonid period is the crown has pretty much an extra headband. In Ashurnasirpal's times, you see a headband up at the top of the fez part and around the bottom, but it seems to me that Tiglath-Pileser III, Malka, King Tiglath-Pileser III, added an extra band around his crown, and that stayed until the end of the Assyrian Empire. This is me wearing the horned cap of power, the cone shape, and this is the shape that you generally see the ancient Assyrian kalus or genie figures wearing most of the time. And that's another variation. It seems like there's different fezzes that were worn on different occasions, different horned crowns that were worn on different occasions. Now, I've even seen Urartian imagery with gods depicted wearing headdresses of this type. And one thing you'll notice, especially about these horned caps, is they seem to have extra bands at the back, and these extra bands that go just behind the ears and around the back actually help with the wearing of the cap. And what I mean by that is it gives more material at the back so that the cap doesn't fall off as easily. So that's a little bit about Ancient Assyrian Crowns, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and we'll see you again sometime soon. This is a costume that I've made, and as you can see, I've still got my tunic underneath, and this is my coat, so to speak. That's got the V shape. And this particular style of Ancient Assyrian Kings outfit is based off an article which was written at the time of the discovery of the Shamshi Adad's Stele. Actually, the Adad-Nirari Stele. Shamshi Adad himself is depicted wearing an outfit very similar to this, and you see the cross, and he's wearing that V, and you also see the line that goes down now, and he's holding a mace but with no dagger. However, I have seen one statue of, it seems to be of a king of unknown provenance to me, and that depicts him wearing a dagger through his broad belt, and you can clearly see the coat that's worn on top of the tunic that he's wearing. Okay, so you can fully see what the dress looks like underneath. It's just my regular white tunic, and it goes over the top of your tunic. And in the ancient Near East they had this type of dress, which could also be knee length high as well. So you can see how, for example, if it was shorter, you would see another layer of fringe here at the bottom, as well as the tassels at the bottom of my tunic as well. So sayonara.